Daryl, thank you for joining me. How are you going?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking. Thanks for making the time, mate. I really, really appreciate it, and very looking forward to speaking with you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, of course, of course. So, yeah, just starting kind of broadly, you are a channel,
Yes.
probably most notably of an entity called Bashar. Maybe can you please give us a little introduction of what being a channel is and how you became one?
Yes. A channel, well, everyone can get into a channeling state. It's a natural state. It's a certain frequency in the brain that is known as gamma, between 40 and 100 cycles per second of brainwave activity. Now, anytime anyone does something that they're really highly focused on, that they love to do, then they're in the zone, so to speak. That's a channeling state when you're not paying attention to the passage of time. You think it's been like 10 minutes and you look up and maybe it's been an hour. You've been in a channeling state. So everyone does experience something like that in their lifetime from time to time. But there are things you can do with that state depending upon what your intention is and how you focus. So for me, this began in 1973 when I had two broad daylight, very close UFO sightings within a week of each other. And that really sort of changed everything in my world because, I had heard about people, saying they had UFO sightings, but once you actually physically see something like that close up and personal, then you know that the world is different than what you've been taught. So I started doing a lot of research to find out what was behind all that. And especially way back then, this is like half a century ago now, um, there weren't a lot of books specifically on UFOs. They were sort of on the same bookshelf in the bookstores with channeling and psychic functioning and ESP and other, supernatural metaphysical kinds of topics. And so I would just kind of go down the bookshelf and read each of these books. And I became somewhat familiar with the concept of channeling through the Jane Roberts Seth material books that were out at the time. And so 10 years after the UFO sightings, I was introduced to a channel who was doing seminars, and I went to listen. And I thought the information was interesting and helpful. And after several months, the entity coming through that particular channel actually offered to teach a channeling class. And I thought, well, I didn't understand how channeling was something that could be taught because all of the records I had read, all of the books I had read about channels, it seemed like it was just something that sort of happened to them out of the blue. Like one minute they're walking along, and the next minute they're unconscious and they're talking, and someone tells them, hey, you've been talking for the last 2 hours, and they don't remember a thing. So I just thought, well, I don't understand how that can be taught to you. So I went into the class not because I thought I was going to be a channel, but I wanted to learn what this was all about. And so it was a 12-week course, guided meditations to put you into different altered states. And it wasn't necessarily expected that you should become a channel, but that you could use this for connecting to your own higher consciousness and for creativity and what have you. So about halfway through the course, 6 weeks in, when we were under a particular guided meditation, I received what I can only describe as a telepathic contact from Bashar. And in that single instant, I saw his face. I heard the word Bashar. I had a memory of making an agreement with him to do this in this life. I understood in that moment that the UFO had been shown to me on purpose to get me to start doing the research so that many years later I would have enough knowledge and be properly prepared to go ahead and do the channeling with him. Now, all of this was in my head, literally just unfolded in like 1 second. And I thought, okay, what's happening here? I'm hallucinating. This is a side effect of the meditation or something like that. But the second this was happening in my head, I hadn't said anything out loud. The entity, coming through the channel, teaching the class, stopped talking to the class and turned right to me and pointed at me and said, "There's an entity here for you right now if you're ready to begin." And then I opened my eyes and I happened to glance behind me, and one of the other students in the class had somehow also picked up telepathically on the image of Bashar's face that I saw in my head, and she was sketching it on a piece of paper. So I said, okay, I've got two outside validations that there is actually something happening here. It's not just my imagination. So I'm going to continue with this and I'm going to see where this leads. Well, I did well enough in the class that the teacher asked me to co-channel the next class with him. And so when I did that in the next class, a woman came along who was doing a doctoral thesis paper on the connection between psychology and channeling. And I became one of her subjects. And I would go to her house and I would channel for a few of her friends, and she would sit in her chair and take notes. So the first week it was kind of like, well, there were 5 friends there. And then the next week, word of mouth spread, and there were 10 friends, and then 20 friends. And then we had to start doing it twice a week and then start doing it in 2 different houses. And then we had to start renting halls and, things like that. And people were making recordings of it and sharing it. And I got invited to different cities when people heard the recordings. And then I started getting invited to different countries when people heard the recordings. And here we are 41 years later, and I'm still doing this. That's in a nutshell how it all unfolded.
Wow. So it literally just unfolded from that class. It just kept snowballing.
Yep, just
That's
kept going. I hardly did anything. Now, of course, people came along to help out. April Rochelle, who runs Bashar Communications, finally, we met. She had seen the channeling. She thought the information was good. And then she started Bashar Communications, to whom I licensed the information. And so they're the official worldwide distributor of Bashar's information. And that's, of course, been very responsible for getting the information out more widely to the world. But yeah, it just all kind of fell in place synchronistically, and here we are today.
wow. So who is Bashar?
Well, Bashar presents himself as a physical extraterrestrial, and that what's happening in the channeling is a telepathic connection, where I go into an altered state that more closely matches his brainwave frequencies. He does the same on his end. Somehow in the middle, we sort of lock frequencies, and I become kind of a model or mirror of what he's thinking, because when you lock frequencies, you think the same things at the same time. So I'm acting kind of as a telephone or a translation device for the thoughts he's sending and the information he wants to share. Now, Bashar is not literally his name. The word was there when that happened in my head, when it first connected with me. And I didn't know until many years later that the word Bashar is an Arabic word that simply means messenger and or bringer of good news. And I think it was chosen by him out of the ethers because part of my cultural background is Arabic. I'm half Arabic and half Irish. And so I think it was chosen for that reason, just as a representation, because he knew we needed to call him something because they don't have names. In their society, they're telepathic. They recognize each other by vibration. They don't really have names in the way that we do. But he knew we needed to call him something. So that was chosen for that reason. Now, he presents himself this way as an extraterrestrial being, as a first contact specialist, because he's basically saying that contact between Earth and other civilizations is relatively imminent. And he is, in that sense, acting as a first contact specialist to help prepare us for first contact with alien species. Now, the one thing I want to stress is nobody has to believe that Bashar is real in order to get an advantage from the information that he talks about and that he shares with us. It could be another part of my own higher consciousness. I can't prove he exists. I have my own proof based on the UFO sightings and other things that have happened to me that say that this is a real entity. But it doesn't really matter because the thing he wants everyone to focus on is the information that he shares. The proof, in a sense, is that the information, when applied in our lives, actually does change things and actually does make a difference. And that's really, from his perspective, all the proof we really need until such time, within a couple of years, that extraterrestrials actually do make themselves known to us publicly. And then we would have all the proof we need that they're real.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because when I first was introduced to you and Bashar, I was through my friend Amir. And to be completely honest, I wasn't overly open to it, but he just started putting some on, and I found it really instantly intriguing. And I was like, after a few listens, I listened to more and more recordings, and after a few listens, I was just quite taken aback at how fast the responses were, how profound a lot of the responses were, and a lot of the recordings I've heard are kind of counseling or working with individuals who are asking questions, and I was quite taken with the information that was kind of coming out very instantaneously, and it definitely kept me very intrigued and kept going. And yeah, I think that is the kind of thing that was very disarming. So what is you said he's come through to prepare us for first contact. Why does an alien race want to make contact with us in the first place?
Well, first of all, in many ways, we're actually genetically related to them. They consider us to be part of their family. This is a very deep and long story that goes along with our history and how they've been interacting with us for thousands of years. And they're recognizing that, we choose to have these earth experiences as souls and doing these incarnations to upgrade ourselves, to improve ourselves, to learn lessons. And we're approaching the time when we're now considering that we're not the only form of life in the universe. That gives off a kind of a vibrational invitation to other beings that are more advanced and can pick up on those energies from us and respond to that invitation, that we're on the threshold of recognizing that we are actually part of a larger galactic family of beings and that we're waking up to that. And they're here to help us open our eyes and realize that in a much more visceral way. So basically, they're here answering an invitation from humanity that is saying, hey, we're considering the idea that there are other planets, that there may be other life in the universe, and we are open to exploring that idea. And therefore, they're responding to the invitation we're putting out that we may be getting ready for contact with other beings to demonstrate to ourselves that the universe and the family of beings in the universe is much vaster than we think.
Hmm. So where is he from?
He calls his world Essassani. It's in a parallel reality to ours that moves at a different frequency. But he has the ability to shift his ship and himself into our reality, and to connect and communicate, as do other members of his society. They're about 3,000 years in advance of us technologically and even perhaps spiritually. So he's a member of a hybrid species. That's a long story in and of itself, but basically, genetically, a hybrid species is that which is kind of made of genetic material 50-50 from Earth humans and also another species that we refer to in the UFO lore as the Greys. So they're kind of an artificially created society that is not only for the purpose of perpetuating the Gray society, since they sort of got to the point where they were no longer capable of reproducing. So they had to find viable genetic material to create hybrids to continue their race. But at the same time, because they're connected to us genetically, they also kind of feel a responsibility to help us avoid the same pitfalls that the Gray Society went through that caused them to lose certain abilities and to not necessarily maintain their environment properly. So they're here to help us avoid the same calamities that caused the Gray civilization to mutate into what they are today. And basically, it's again, they feel a kinship with us. That's why he's doing this. And we're not the only civilization that he's in contact with, because again, he is a first contact specialist. So, but we're one that he found interesting and challenging and wanted to engage with us in this way and share information to see if we would in fact adopt that information into our understanding and upgrade our vibration to make ourselves more vibrationally compatible with extraterrestrials who operate on a much higher frequency. So it's really up to us as to whether or not we accept the information, integrate the information, upgrade our vibration, and make ourselves more capable of having open contact with extraterrestrials.
Mm. You said he's kind of from a parallel reality. Is that within the physical universe? Like, could you actually pinpoint the spot if you were able to look, or is this like
No.
another dimension, another
Yeah,
frequency?
it's another reality dimension. So it's like saying, there are multiple universes that are overlapping, but they're
Mm.
invisible to each other because they operate on different frequencies. Much in the same way that that when you're watching a television program, you're watching one show because it's on a certain channel, and that channel represents a certain frequency.
Mm.
And there are other programs playing at the same time, but you don't see them unless you change the channel. So basically, it's sort of structured like that as a simplistic analogy, where there are a multitude of different universes that are all sort of overlapping at the same place, but not at the same time, not at the same frequency. So they're invisible to one another unless you have the ability, like they do, to actually shift into a new frequency and experience a different reality. So if we were going to say his reality is overlapped with ours, and you wanted a general understanding of where his solar system is, it would be in the direction of the Orion constellation, about 500 light years away, but their star is invisible to us because it's in another dimension. It's in another reality.
Right. And that other dimension is more or less physical, just a different physical.
To them,
Yeah.
yeah, to them, it's just as physical as ours is to us.
Mm. Yeah. Right.
And
Interesting.
if we were capable of shifting into their dimension as they are into ours, we would experience it as another physical universe, as physical as ours. Their planet is a physical planet. They orbit a physical star, exactly like we do. So, yeah, but you have to shift into that vibration.
Mm.
Again, it's sort of analogous to, look at visible light. There are spectrum, there are frequencies of light we can see, and there are frequencies of electromagnetic energy and light that we cannot see, like ultraviolet and infrared and X-rays and things like that. So it's all here, but we can't see the ones that are invisible to our senses because they simply operate on a frequency that's beyond our ability to perceive.
Mm. So, you said the name Bashar is messenger or bringer of good news. You've also said, of course, they're here to initiate contact to prepare us. But what is the good news? What is the main message that Bashar seems keen to put forward?
The main message has to do with us understanding truly who we are as souls, as spiritual beings, as aspects of source, of whatever you want to call it, God, goddess, all that is, source. He wants to help us wake up to what we really are so that we can live lives that are more creative, more loving, more constructive, and more in service to others, to really help our civilization understand that it doesn't have to struggle, it doesn't have to suffer. It can wake up to the fact that it's not alone, that we're connected to spirit, that we are capable of much more than we think we are. And he gives certain instructions as to how we can achieve that in our lives and live lives that are more loving, more creative, more joyful, and be of service to others by being a living example of how to do that so that they can see in us how to do that for themselves as well. Because he's saying that's the whole key to receiving information from higher levels of consciousness is to raise your vibration and make yourself a better antenna, a better receiver of higher frequency information that may be coming from our spirit guides, our spirit team that everyone has. And that will help us move forward, and it'll help us understand that we are creating our reality experience with what we believe to be true and how we think. So if he's able to tell us, here's the instruction for how you understand how you're already creating your physical reality experience, then you can create it more consciously with more awareness and not have to constantly experience things that cause struggle and strife. You can face the challenges in your life in the way that your soul laid them out to learn lessons that help you grow. And of course, challenges are necessary for learning those lessons, but the challenges don't have to be that you have to suffer. The challenges don't have to be that you have to struggle or think less of yourself or think you're not deserving or you're not capable or you're not worthy or any of those kinds of negative belief systems. You can grow and you can learn by learning how to face your challenges in a more positive way that will give you the lessons you need to raise your vibration and evolve and move forward as a soul.
How do you think that's going for humanity? It feels, I think a lot of people at the moment feel that, I don't know, it feels like it's a bit of a boiling point with world events and things. Things seem to get very, I don't know, very uncertain, unstable. Of course, we've gone through extremely challenging times in the past, like in most recent periods. I mean, imagine living through World War II. Can't even imagine, but we got through it, and it came out pretty good out the other end. I'd say, but yeah, I mean, how is that kind of where are we at as humanity, and where's the guidance leading us?
Well, we have to realize Earth is a challenging school, for lack of a better term. It goes in cycles. The point is, are we learning the lessons? We keep doing through cycles a lot of the same things over and over. At what point are we going to say, we're not going to do that again? We have learned the lesson of how to change this, of how to prevent this negative thing from happening. So now we are kind of approaching the end of a long cycle of experiencing certain things over and over again. We're now at a point where we have an opportunity to figure out how to stop that from happening, how to start a new cycle where we don't necessarily have to experience those negative things again. But that's the reason why everything is so chaotic, is we're at the end of one cycle, and that means we have to get everything out on the table. We have to reveal every single fear-based and negative thing that we have ever experienced. We have to look at what we're really creating on our world and ask ourselves, is this the way we really prefer to continue? Or do we want to finally do something about it and make a difference and make sure that these kinds of things don't happen to humanity ever again in the future? So this is an extremely critical point in our history where we have the choice to decide what kind of a world we really want to move forward in, what kind of a future we really want. And the thing about that is we've also arrived at a point where extraterrestrial beings and spirit beings can help us by giving us information that can help wake us up to figure out how to make the changes we need to make so that we can have a more positive future. We've arrived at a point in our history where the cycle is saying, you are now at a point where you're not alone. You have help from many different sources, but you still have to make the decision to accept the information that they're sharing with you that helps you make it possible to move forward in a positive way. So it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to do that. But it will be at this point relatively inevitable that we will discover we are not alone. And so we have to factor that in. We have to factor the fact that we're going to be exposed publicly to the existence of extraterrestrials in the near future. And we have to factor in how we want to relate to their reality and how we want to take that information and relate it to our reality in order to move forward in a more positive way. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge, obviously, but it's the culmination of thousands of years of history. It's the culmination of thousands of years of these cycles of negativity, of rising up and getting destroyed and rising up and getting destroyed over and over again. But now we're at a different point where the ETs are saying you don't have to do that again. You don't have to be destroyed and start from scratch again. You can move forward with our help, but you have to make the decision to do that. Now, they're going to be here anyway. We're going to know they exist. The question is, what do we want to do with that knowledge? And how do we want to take that knowledge and move forward in a positive way for humanity? So this is a very crucial time of choosing what kind of a future we really want to experience.
How are we supposed to respond if aliens do come land, make themselves known? I mean, there seems to be, I've been very interested in the alien slash UFO subject for a very long time. Part of the whole slow drip of what seems to be a slow drip of disclosure at the moment also
Right.
seems to get kind of murky when it comes from the top down. The people that have kind of seem to have lied to us for many
Sure.
years, and it does seem very difficult to know what to trust. Also, the other factor of when they arrive, could that generate a whole lot of fear in the general public?
Of course.
Could it result in a
Of course.
conflict?
No,
How
no,
does it?
not a conflict, not a conflict. There will be a lot of fearful reactions because of a lot of the belief systems that people are holding on to. I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight. It's probably going to take a couple of decades for us to get used to the idea. But nevertheless, they're going to help us do that in ways that are not going to push us. They're not going to force us. We will know they exist. There will be absolute proof that they exist, but they're going to allow us to determine how to absorb that information in our own way at our own pace. But the thing that has to happen is they will make themselves known so that then we can decide everyone on the planet individually, countries can decide how do we want to engage with this or do we want to engage with this. There will probably be people and there will probably be countries who will withdraw from that at first, who may be too fearful, too authoritarian, too afraid of giving up control to allow themselves to engage with the ETs that way. But I think eventually, over the course of a couple of decades, they will realize that what the ETs have to offer us is so beneficial and so capable of moving humanity forward in such a beneficial way that if they don't ultimately say, okay, we'll finally go along with this, we'll finally adapt this knowledge into our society, they're going to be left in the Stone Age. So, and remember, old generations will die away, new generations will come up that will be used to the fact that we're engaged with extraterrestrials. So that's going to make it easier for humanity to sort of say, okay, you have been helping us now for decades. We understand that you're beneficial. We understand that this is going to help with humanity's evolution and that we're going to gain great benefits from this. And so, okay, we'll go along with it. So I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight, but what will happen very soon is that we will know for a fact that they do exist and that they are capable of helping those people who are willing to engage with them in that way.
Is our development or our spiritual evolution dependent on an outside force like this? Because I often wonder that I feel like our stagnation is often based on the systems that we have rigidly enforced on ourselves,
Yeah.
various systems, and breaking free of those systems. There's so many safeguards. It almost seems like some kind of collapse needs to happen before, or intervention needs to happen before we could be free of those systems and formulate new systems in their place. So
Yeah.
is a contact essential to this next
I,
phase?
I think I think for us it is. They are also saying that we're at a point I mean, you know what the doomsday clock is, yes?
Um,
No, okay.
yep.
Uh, some time ago, a group of scientists decided that they would sort of create this measure of how close we are to self-destruction as a planet. And there have been certain times, they say it's like so many minutes to midnight, midnight being the collapse of humanity, either through nuclear confrontation or drastic climactic change or, getting hit by an asteroid or something like that. So midnight is the crucial thing. And it's like so many minutes to midnight means we are either closer or farther away from that idea of total humanity collapsing. So recently, so things like in like World War II or in the Cold War when we had, the threat of nuclear annihilation, the doomsday clock was put, relatively close to midnight, so many minutes to midnight. Now, recently, I think within literally like the last month or so, because of all the chaos going on around the world, this group of scientists have put the time the closest it's ever been. It was like several years ago or several months ago, it was like 90 seconds to midnight. Now it's 85 seconds to midnight because they're seeing us get closer and closer and closer to situations that could cause the destruction of our society. I think at this point, it's essential that another factor come in that make us realize that we have another option. And that other factor is the extraterrestrials. From their point of view, from the extraterrestrials' point of view, Earth is a unique school for souls to grow and learn from. They do not want to see it destroyed. We have gone through several cycles of societal destruction, such as Atlantis and so on and so forth. But we have arrived at a point now where the ETs are saying, look, you are at the point where you actually have the ability to truly wipe out all of life on Earth. We cannot allow that to happen. It's too important a place for souls to learn and grow. And therefore, it's time for us to add one more factor that you now have to consider, one more option to you that gives you the ability to know there is a way out of this because we cannot let you destroy this place. It's too important. So we are going to introduce ourselves. You're going to know we're here, and it's going to give you that one option that can help turn everything around and if you're willing to take it, and enough of you at this point are willing to take that option so that we know you will not destroy the planet. We're still going to let you as individuals and individual countries decide when, where, and how you will take that option. We're not going to force it, but we are going to make it clear that the option exists. And
Mm,
that will make all the difference in the world now
mm.
at this particular crucial time.
One thing that also I found extremely intriguing, having listened to many recordings of Bashar's transmissions, are kind of these predictions. So I remember listening to some older ones, and it was there were predictions about the fall, what would happen in the autumn or fall of 2016. And all the followers seemed to be like, yep, you warned us. I thought that was quite interesting. Big election shifts, I guess, in America, which is the dominating force in the world. Another thing, a few years ago, probably maybe around 2022 or 2021 or something, when I started listening, was talking about this unfolding of disclosure. And I remember Bashar basically saying, "Oh, I think I could be getting this wrong. You'll correct me. It was between 2024 and I think 2033." And I think
Mhm.
I remember hearing one saying, that they will just slowly sightings will start happening, things will start coming out. And another thing I saw on your Instagram is 2026 is the year of disclosure.
Right.
So far, I mean, last year, big year for the subject. all the
Yeah,
hearings and things.
absolutely.
Lots of interesting things coming out. I feel like the whole collective consciousness around the subject has shifted. It was not long ago that you'd be looked at as a crazy person for saying you've seen a UFO. So what does 2026 have in store for us?
Well, yeah, I think more and more information coming out, more definitive proof that UFOs exist, that ETs exist, more photographs of UFOs that are undeniable, more reports on mainstream news that UFO sightings are real. I mean, once you had the United States Pentagon saying, yeah, we're not going to say what they are, but we're going to say UFOs do exist, they are real, that was a watershed moment. Another moment is all the congressional hearings that are taking place and the attempt to establish new rules and new laws that protect whistleblowers from that so that they can come forward and talk about what they know, because a lot of people in some of the secret programs have not been able to talk about it, but now they're trying to institute new laws that will allow them to come forward and admit that these things are real. They're instituting new laws that will allow military people to come forward who have had UFO sightings, who have been, followed UFOs in their aircraft, things like that, so that they can know that they can talk about these things without worrying that their careers are in jeopardy or that they're going to be ridiculed. So that's a big and very important step that will allow more information to keep pouring out. I think now we've had like 5 or 6 big congressional hearings about this, and they're trying to establish new laws. Now, yes, there's resistance to it from obviously certain factions, either within or beneath the government or above the government, whatever you want to say, that do resist this for a variety of reasons. But I think it's inevitable that this is going to come out. And sooner or later, in this year or the next, we are going to have some definitive, I think, photographic proof or even visual proof that these UFOs are here, they're real, they exist, ETs exist. And then the idea is that somewhere in 2027, there will be a actual official public introduction in some kind of government announcement or press conference or something along that line that says, all right, it's time to actually physically introduce to you these beings, and here they are. And then we will have definitive proof. And again, at that point, there will be some kind of program laid out whereby that knowledge can be assimilated into our society in a way that gives us the opportunity to take it in at our own pace, so that, our societal structures don't automatically collapse, that we're given the opportunity to integrate this knowledge into our society in a way that allows us to build on it and not be worried that it's going to cause the destruction of our society. But it will be a massive change that we will have to get used to.
Do the people in charge know that this is coming, or is it all just kind of slipping through their fingers a bit?
Well, both. A lot
Mm.
of them know it's coming. A lot of the people on the inside that have been keeping the secret are trying to break free. That's what the whistleblowers are all about. They're trying to give this knowledge to the people, and make it public. There are those that are resistant to it, and it's going to slip through their fingers because ultimately they can't really control the ability of the ETs to show us their ships. I mean, there are more and more and more sightings happening every day, and more recordings of it happening every day. So inevitably, it's just going to be, look, it's on the news so often that you just can't deny it anymore. It's almost going to be like the weather report. And, here's today's UFO report. There were 3 sightings in Brazil and 4 sightings over Amsterdam, and over the United States, we saw this mothership. It's going to get to that point. And so finally, everyone's just going to go, yeah, they're here. you know,
Mm.
we'll just get used to it.
So have they been here for a long? You said they've been working with humans for thousands of
Yeah.
years. Are they here now? Are there aliens walking among us on Earth?
Yes, there are. There are extraterrestrial hybrids that are close enough looking to us that they can fit into our society. They have been working behind the scenes to help. with different technologies, different, realms of sociology, different health issues, things like that, slowly introducing extraterrestrial technology into our society in a way that makes us basically think it's our own discovery. But they've been doing that. They've been working secretly to prevent certain catastrophes from happening that we just think, oh, well, we got lucky, or that somehow that technology failed to hurt anyone. But that's because they made sure it wouldn't. So there are those things going on secretly. But when open contact occurs, the first thing, as I understand it, that is going to be done is we will be told who these extraterrestrial beings are that have been living and working among us so that we can actually start interacting with them openly. And then after that, in short order, we will then be introduced to what I would refer to as the pure extraterrestrials that are not necessarily hybridized from human DNA and extraterrestrial DNA and not living and working among us, but actually from outside. And that might start with Pleiadians and other kinds of extraterrestrials that people have been talking about for many, many years. So it's going to be, again, a process done in phases so that we get used to it. But the first ones we will be able to openly interact with will be the extraterrestrial hybrids that have been living and working among us because they're already here and we're already used to the idea that they've been in our society. And that will be something that we can assimilate a little bit more easily.
Are there any hybrids that are prominent hybrids that we're aware of? Public
No, we're
figures?
not aware. We're not aware of any of them at this point. It is an absolute secret. Anytime at this point, there have been instances where people have, let's say, noticed that something is different about them, but these beings are telepathically capable of literally putting a thought in your head to ignore them and just go on about your business. So there have been people that said, I saw this couple and there was just something really weird and strange about them. I can't put my finger on it, but they just didn't seem like they were from here. And in the next moment they go, but then, I guess, I don't know, I was just making it up and I went about my business. So yes, there have been a few instances where people may have come across them, but they're not in our society in a way that they stand out at all in any way, shape, or form. Um, in that sense, they appear to be ordinary people.
Hmm. And what are they hybrid with? Obviously, you've said extraterrestrials, but what type? Who?
Well, any number of genetic, they're hybridized from the Greys, possibly Pleiadians, because Pleiadians are very similar to us in a certain way. Or I'm going to put it this way, actually, because a lot of people say, why are the ETs so similar to us? We're similar to them because we're genetically related to them. Anything that's on this planet in one way, shape, or form, whether deliberately introduced or whether through panspermia, where genetic material has been delivered by asteroids and comets in the deep, deep past, in a sense, carry genetic material to the Earth that then developed into what we are as human beings. So humans are already a composite of different extraterrestrial genetics. So it's not that the extraterrestrials we've been dealing with look like us, it's that we look like them because we come from the same genetic stock, a mix of things that they have been for thousands and thousands of years. So that's why we're so relatable. Now, there are aliens that look nothing like us. And probably eventually in open contact down the line somewhere, we will be introduced to extraterrestrials that really are more and more unlike us, look nothing like us at all, to which we're not necessarily genetically related. But they understand that these introductions need to happen in a way that we can absorb. So that's why the hybrids first, because they're very much like us. Then maybe something like the Pleiadians that are somewhat like us, different enough that we would only look at them as maybe an exotically different race of humanoids. But then, come things like reptilian beings, insect-like beings, and beings that we probably can't even imagine at this particular point that are nothing like us at all down the line when we've gotten used to the fact that no one is going to blow us up. they have our best interests at heart.
What are some of the things that they have left behind? You know, you mentioned before certain technologies or anything. Are there anything that we kind of are aware of, or you're aware of, that has been
Yeah,
left behind to get,
yeah, and
offer
it's,
clues?
this information isn't just coming from Bashar, it's coming from a lot of different psychic mediums and things like that. A good example is one psychic medium recently talked about the fact that a lot of the extraterrestrial hybrids that are working in certain technologies secretly, there are certain missiles that have been doctored by them to fail, so that we would just think, oh, we were going to fire this missile, at this group of people, and something just went wrong with the technology. It just didn't work the way we thought it was going to work. But that's been deliberately turned off by the extraterrestrials who have access to it. So they're preventing those kinds of destructive things from happening uh, secretly, but we just think it's a mechanical failure. But it was done deliberately by them to make sure we didn't blow ourselves up.
Hmm.
That kind of stuff. There have been many sightings now recorded, and it's relatively in the public domain now, I think. When anyone investigates UFO information, they find out that there have been several instances of UFOs hovering over nuclear missile silos and scrambling the launch codes or turning them off or activating them in a way that shows that no, we have total control over this and we're not going to let you have a global thermonuclear war. That is just not acceptable at this point. So I think that the people in the military who have witnessed that and experienced that, I think they've gotten the message very clearly that while the extraterrestrials won't necessarily stop local skirmishes, they will not allow us to destroy the planet at this point by telling us in no uncertain terms, you're just not going to be able to launch those missiles if you even try to, because we'll stop it. We have the technology to do so, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Maybe that could be the catalyst for when they finally reveal themselves.
Yeah.
Um, Near disaster point.
Yeah, one of the things that Bashar has said and other psychic mediums have said as well, and other channels have said, is one of the things that's going to happen when open contact occurs. One of the gifts they're going to be able to give us are holographic recordings of our entire history to let us know what gaps we're missing in our knowledge, in our history. So we'll be able to actually see holographically recordings of things like Atlantis. What did that look like? And what happened, and all this kind of stuff, and all the gaps in history that we're missing. How were the pyramids built? Who built them? How was it done? We're going to see recordings of all of that we've been missing because we just don't know what our history has been because there's been cycles of destruction. So that's one of the gifts, as I understand it, that the ETs will be giving us is here's your entire history. Now you know where you came from, and now you know what's possible, and now you know where you can go from
Hmm.
here.
Has Bashar revealed any information, or does he have any thoughts on what the pyramids, particularly in Egypt, were? The Great Pyramid?
They are some sort of, well, they serve multiple functions, as I understand it. Some sort of power generation, because they've recently discovered there are deeper structures under those pyramids as well that tap into the earth and use the electromagnetic field as a focusing mechanism to generate electric current and other things. But they also were used vibrationally as teaching centers and as inducement for things like astral projection and stuff like that. It made it easier for the priesthood to learn by being immersed in the vibrational frequency in, I think, the king's chamber in the pyramid to actually learn to astral project so that they could go and get information from the universe and bring it back to their physical society and share that information and upgrade their society. But again, things happened, and over time, knowledge was lost, societies were destroyed either by asteroidal impact or climate change or what have you. And, we lost that information, but it's still buried in different places. And I think we will ultimately discover that as well, or ETs will simply bring that information back to us as part of the gifts they will give us. And again, by having those holographic recordings, we'll have absolute proof of exactly how those things were done.
Hmm. So after, it was said earlier between 2024 or 2025 and 2033, uh,
Mhm.
the extraterrestrials, UFOs, whatever, will make themselves known. A slow disclosure will happen. What happens? Has there been any discussion about what happens after 2023?
You mean 2033?
Sorry, yeah, that's what I meant. 2033.
Yeah, well, right now, I mean, that was the original window, but right now, basically, Bashar and other people are saying it's open contact is basically in 2027. So it's condensed now. This is the year of disclosure. 2027 is ostensibly the year of actual contact. By 2033, we will already be adapting the existence of extraterrestrials into changes in our society. And by the year 2050, it will be totally understood and totally integrated into our society. And we will be, in a sense, a part of a galactic federation at that point. Humanity will be on a different path. We will have reset humanity in a different direction because of the extraterrestrial knowledge that we will receive from them. But 2027 is now the pivot point around which they're talking about open contact actually being introduced to
Hmm.
our society. So afterwards, again, there will be different reactions that will take place over time. But a lot of humans who will adapt to the information and interact with the extraterrestrials in positive ways, it will be a great acceleration. Things like free energy, things like how to produce, food so that no one is starving, political changes, sociological changes, changes in religious beliefs will start happening. So it's going to be a very major shift on all levels of our society, financial, everything. But again, they'll give us time to adapt. They'll give us time to insert new systems that will be more beneficial for humanity as a whole rather than the way it's been where a few have everything and a lot have nothing. So, it'll balance out because we'll understand from their point of view how it will actually serve every individual to serve the whole. That's the basic extraterrestrial philosophy is you have to serve the whole because you're part of the whole. And if you serve the whole, you will get served because you're part of it. If you only serve yourself, you're cutting yourself off from how the whole can serve you too. So it's service to others that actually will allow each and every individual to be served as well.
Hmm. You mentioned before a galactic federation. So Bashar says there is a galactic federation.
Absolutely.
What is that? What's the role? What are their
Well, it's
roles?
just it's like the UN, right? It's a collection of different civilizations that all have a similar understanding of the relationship to the universe, to source, to creation. They all play different roles. They all have different skills, shall we say, different levels of experience, different perspectives on how things can be done. And so it's just like the UN, they communicate with one another, they decide what would be beneficial for the expansion of existence for the benefit of all. They work together in that way and use their different skills and different abilities, different levels of knowledge to achieve things that serve the whole of the gathering that has agreed to work together. So it just think of the United Nations on steroids
Hmm.
among the stars.
Are there civilizations or alien races that have been banished, that are deemed enemies, that have not part of
I
this?
can't I can't speak too much to that. Bashar has not talked about a lot of that, all except to say that yes, of course, there are other civilizations that wouldn't necessarily operate on a similar frequency, that wouldn't necessarily have our best interests at heart, but the ones that do are keeping them at bay. So they're either not part of the Federation or they're simply curious. But the ones that have our best interest at heart have enough ability to make sure that those beings have no negative effect on us.
Yeah. Just as we're kind of coming toward the end of the interview, I was just wondering how is this a whole decade's worth of channeling this extraterrestrial entity affected your life? Obviously, majorly. I'm sure you had other plans. What? Yeah. Has
Well,
also
yes.
has Bashar? Do you have a direct relationship with Bashar at all, or is it more that you're just a vessel for him to communicate through?
Well, that is a direct relationship because I learn things from him as well. I can actually have separate conversations with him while I'm channeling him and he's talking to you. So I have learned things that have allowed me to apply them to my life, that has changed my life in drastic ways, that allow me to be more emotionally balanced, that allow me to experience more synchronicity, that allow me to act on things more creatively. And it's changed my life in a number of ways, especially because, look what I'm doing here with you. This was never something I imagined I would ultimately be doing, is talking to thousands and thousands of people around the world and having them give me feedback that his information has really helped them in their lives. That's very gratifying. And that's the reason I keep doing it, is because it does seem to help people quite a bit. But I get a lot out of it too. Again, it's the idea of serving the whole, and it serves me. So, yeah, it's changed my life drastically. There would have been a time when I would have thought you were crazy if you said I was going to be doing this. But this is how my life unfolded, and I understand the purpose of it. And I understand the things in my life that prepared me for it before I even knew it was going to happen. So, yeah. But it's really just about being your true self, and it's about serving others by being your true self, following your passion, living it, and really demonstrating and being a living example of how other people can do so as well. Communicating clearly with people, communicating clearly within yourself, to know yourself, that ancient knowledge, right? Know thyself, to let go of negative and fear-based beliefs that don't serve you, that you may have picked up along the way, and to really exhibit what beliefs are in alignment with who you are as a soul. What is your true purpose here in being who you are and serving others? So that's really bottom line what it's really all about. And it's not so much about the idea of having to interact with or believe in extraterrestrials to make a difference. It's more about understanding your own soul, interacting as a spirit in physical form to, again, be of service to others, to the universe, to creation, to existence, by helping it expand, by helping it know itself through all of us. We're all the different ways that existence has of knowing itself. We're all the different eyes through which it sees itself. Acting as such makes the big difference and allows us to create a reality on Earth that is something that would be more enjoyable and more beneficial for everyone.
Hmm. As you mentioned, with thousands of people around the world being kind of extremely interested in this, have you found that dynamic to be challenging or a bit sticky, or having a lot of people kind of having a huge following of something kind of that maybe you as Daryl haven't, it's kind of a bit larger than really understanding, like the directions are coming from someone else. So
Yeah,
do you find that to be sticky or hard to
there
navigate?
are there are moments where I have to navigate certain things. There are challenges to it, but nothing that I haven't been able to handle. I've been able to maintain my private life. I've been able to apply the information in my own life to make changes. Uh, but it's been something that I've achieved as a balance. It's been something that would be designed in a way to make sure it can be done in a balanced way. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So I haven't had to face that many challenges with regard to the public knowing about this. There have been a few times when there have been things to work through with other people, but that's few and far between. For the most part, it expresses itself in a way that allows people to get the point and apply it in their own lives in a way where then it's not necessarily inhibiting my ability to apply it in my own life and experience it for myself in a balanced way too. So it hasn't been that challenging. And again, because I agreed to do this in this life, it's been laid out and arranged in such a way that it would not prevent me from being able to handle it. So it kind of goes hand in hand with, if you've agreed to do this kind of a thing, it sort of arranges itself in a way that makes it possible for you to be able to do this kind of thing without that much challenge to prevent you from doing it.
And just finally, do you think that do you anticipate a time in the next, I don't know, well, however period where Bashar is no longer needed to be channeled through you, and he will leave?
Well, yeah, or he will show up. In other words, if we have open contact with other people from other stars and they're here and we can talk to them directly, there is no point in channeling them because you can actually have conversations with them face to face. What I would continue to do, if necessary, would be, again, in addition to simply acting on my own passions, I would continue to teach the information as myself for people that don't necessarily lock into it as easily as others. And I can help them understand through different kinds of classes and spend more time looking at that information so that they can really finally get it and apply it for themselves. So I will continue to do that. I'm starting to do that already by teaching segments of this class of Bashar's information, that I will do over longer periods of time, because Bashar comes through and it's like maybe a 90-minute event. So people need to spend sometimes more time digging into each of the principles so that they can really make them their own. And I will be the one to probably do that because I understand the information deeply enough that I can teach it in a way that takes hours and lets people spend hours working with it so that they can really get used to it and make it, something that becomes second nature to them or first nature to them.
Sorry, at the start of the interview, you said you saw his face telepathically. What did he look like?
They're a hybrid species, which generally means they're humanoid, but they're relatively thin. Their skin is extremely pale. It's about the color of paper. They have slightly larger heads, very much larger eyes. Their ears, noses, and mouths are smaller. They're relatively slender. They're about 5 feet tall on average. The males in their society don't have hair. The females do. It tends to be white. There are exceptions. So they're kind of, if you're familiar with what the grays look like, imagine a 50-50 hybrid between a gray and a human being on Earth. So it's kind of like there's traits of both, of us and of the gray beings. So they're a hybrid race. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, Daryl, I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for making the time. It's been a
Of
very,
course.
very interesting conversation, and very much look forward to seeing how things unfold in the next few years, where
Yeah, me
disclosure
too.
comes, and keeping my ear open to what Bashar's messages are.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone that wants to know more about Bashar's information can go to bashar.org, bashar.org, and find out anything there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye bye.